I'm Erin and I'm the Teen and Adult Reference Librarian, and today I've got a fun list for you. So I wanted to do a top 10 list of movies, of the top 90s movies for teens. And you're like, why 90s movies? Because 90s movies were the best movies, especially when it came to teens. And what goes around comes around. Scrunchies are back, the choker necklaces are cool again, all from the 90s. And even though I was born in the 80s, I am a child of the 90s. So I decided to go through our JCPL catalog and see what we actually had. So everything that I'm going to say we do have available either on DVD or digitally. So I'm just going to go ahead and launch in, and I'll give you the description and see if you can guess it. I'm guessing you've seen at least one or two of the ones on this list. So coming in at number 10. This came out in 1999 and was rated R. It starred James Van Der Beek and Paul Walker from the Fast and the Furious franchise. And it's about a backup quarterback who is chosen to lead the Texas football team to victory after their star quarterback is injured. And if you haven't guessed it, that's Varsity Blues. Classic. Coming in at number 9. Came out in 1998. This one's rated PG-13. And this is a spin-off of Cinderella. So it's an old woman recounting the glass slipper that she has, and it kind of takes you back in time to when she was a teenager. And it stars Drew Barrymore and Angelica Houston. And if you haven't guessed it, it's Ever After. And that's a really fun movie too, because they also have some little historical bits in there. So you'll see, I believe it's Michelangelo, or no, it's Da Vinci is in there. And it's a really fun movie. And that one's more of like a family-friendly movie too, if you want to watch something with your parents. Number 8. This came out in 1992 and is rated PG. When they find a frozen caveman in their backyard, 2 high school outcasts thaw him and introduce him to modern life, and he in turn actually gets to enjoy life. So it stars Sean Astin from The Goonies and Lord of the Rings, Brendan Fraser, who's from The Mummy, Airheads, George of the Jungle, and Pauly Shore, who's from Biodome and Son-in-Law. If you haven't guessed that, that is Encino Man, and it is ridiculous and so much fun. Number 7. This came out in 1996 and is rated R. This is one of the few horror type movies I have on here. A newcomer to a Catholic prep school falls in with a trio of outcast girls who practice witchcraft, and things go bad quickly. This stars Neve Campbell. I can never say her name. I couldn't say it in the 90s, and I can't say it now. And it is the cult classic, The Craft. So that one, it's definitely a dark one, but it's still pretty fun. All right, for number 6, this came out in 1995. It's rated PG-13, and it's about 4 12-year-old girls who grow up together during an eventful small-town summer in 1970. The town is, interestingly enough, set in Indiana, although it was not filmed here, sadly. It's pretty much like Stand By Me, but starring girls. It stars Christina Ricci, Rosie O'Donnell, Demi Moore, Melanie Griffith, and Hank Azaria from The Simpsons. If you haven't guessed it, it's Now and Then. Alright, now we're getting into the top 5, and I will admit, minus number 1, these could basically all be number 2. They're all so good. I had a really hard time trying to pick an order for the top 5. So bear with me. Number 5, this came out in 1999. This is rated PG-13. And this is a newspaper reporter enrolls in high school as part of research for one of her stories. But high school is a lot harder than she remembers, and she's pretty much instantly ostracized. But the nerds take her under their wing. And it stars Drew Barrymore and Molly Shannon from SNL. And that movie is Never Been Kissed. Pretty iconic fashion in that movie too. For number 4, this came out in 1999. 1999 was the year when a lot of these ones came out. PG-13, it stars Julia Stiles and Joseph Gordon-Levitt and Heath Ledger, yes, that Heath Ledger. And it's about a pretty popular teenage girl who can't go on a date until her ill-tempered older sister does. And that movie is 10 Things I Hate About You. Coming in at number 3, also 1999, PG-13, stars Freddie Prinze Jr., he was my man, Paul Walker, and Matthew Lillard, who you may know as Shaggy from Scooby-Doo, and he's been the voice now of Shaggy. Or Scooby-Doo, I mean. He's not the voice of Shaggy. So it's about a high school jock that makes a bet that he can turn an unattractive girl into a prom queen. So it's kind of a really mean bet, but then he kind of learns a lesson, and that movie is She's All That, one of my personal favorites. Number 2 is very iconic, and it inspired one of the most iconic Halloween costumes of the 90s. Came out in 1996. It is rated R, and it stars Courtney Cox, Drew Barrymore, Neve Campbell, and Matthew Lillard again. And a year after the murder of her mother, a teenage girl is terrorized by a new killer who targets the girl and her friends by using horror films as part of a deadly game. And that movie is Scream, and you may remember that iconic ghost mask that came out right after that movie because it was featured in it. And number 1, drum roll, I could not have this not be number 1. It came out in 1995. It was rated PG-13. It stars Alicia Silverstone, Brittany Murphy, Paul Rudd, who still doesn't look like he's aged. Paul Rudd looks identical to what he was in this movie. It's about a shallow, rich, successful girl who's at the top of her Beverly Hills High School's pecking scale. She sees herself as a matchmaker, and she coaxes 2 teachers into dating each other, and then she tries to set up her friend. It's actually based off of a Jane Austen book, Emma. And that movie is Clueless. It has very iconic lines in it, the fashion. I mean, it's a fantastic movie all around. As kind of a bonus, one movie that did not put on my list is American Pie. That one is very raunchy, but it is very much a teenage movie of the 90s, and I'd be remiss if I didn't mention it. Just because it's not in my top 10 doesn't mean it is a great teen movie. So that is my list. If you think that I excluded anything, comment below. But I had a lot of fun putting this together, and I hope you had a lot of fun listening to it, and hope maybe it inspired you to check out some movies from JCPL. Thanks so much.